Hello everyone, welcome to another ODNT Spotlight. I'm Steve DeWinter, your host, and we have us another wonderful guest. His name is Lindsay Schopfer, and he, for the past 4 years, was in the Sci-Fi Fantasy category chairman for the Pacific Northwest Writers Association's annual literary contest. Whew, what a mouthful that was. And so he has been working with a lot of people and everything, and he also has put out several books of his own, starting with back in 2012, he put out a sci-fi epic, Lost Under Two Moons. That one sounds really good. And then just last year, he released The Beast Hunter, which started his Kelton Moore series. And he is actually, we'll talk to him a little bit. He's already working on the sequel to this one, so that sounds very interesting, very exciting. And he just had last Tuesday, so it's November 16th now, so if you're watching this recently, just recently, he put out a collection of his short stories, Magic, Mystery, and Mirth. And I started looking through this one on the preview on Amazon, and boy, I know that I'm going to love some of these, especially, he's made me laugh already just reading his little description of what made him write this little short story here and that short story there, and it's just, it already starts out great just reading him. So let's go ahead and let's switch on over and let's meet Lindsay. Hello, Lindsay. Welcome to ODNT, where we shine the spotlight on you.
Hey, Steve. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, of course. So tell me a little bit about your writing, where you get your inspirations from that.
So just kind of in general, where I get my inspirations?
Sure.
All right. So I never really grew up. I think that's true with a lot of writers, especially fantasy and sci-fi writers.
I like how you put on your website, you got older, but you didn't grow up.
Yeah, pretty much.
I love that. I'm taking that. That's mine now.
Okay, you can have it.
All right.
But, I loved playing make-believe as a kid. I live in the Capitol Forest here in Washington State.
Oh, nice.
And as a kid, I would go out among the cedars and, listen to the rain and just play make-believe, slay dragons, go on quests. And when I grew up, it kind of became socially unacceptable to continue to do that.
But they didn't have any LARPs around your place? Live-action roleplay?
Yeah. Well, I am into role-playing too, but that's a whole nother story. I wanted to keep playing make-believe, and writing, it turns out, is even better than playing make-believe because I get to share in those stories with other people. Because the way I feel about it is that when somebody's reading the story, it's really a collaborative effort between the writer and the reader, right? Because I'm offering some things to the reader, but the reader's filling in all the other blanks. They're providing everything else that's there. So together we are telling this story. So every time I give somebody a book that's mine, it's like, here, let's tell a story together. And so when someone comes back and they say, oh, I love this book, you did a great job, and it's like, thanks. And so did you, apparently.
You did a good job of reading it.
That's right.
Excellent.
5 stars as a good reader.
So you just released a compendium of short stories this past week. And what was your concept for wanting to release a group of short stories? Short stories is, not a current market much. Yeah.
To be totally honest, the driving motion, at least at first, was envy. It was title envy. I was at a book launch thing. Well, somebody was using it as a book launch, but it was like a book signing event. And
a local event, authors all got together?
Yeah. There's like 6 other authors. They all got their books out, and everyone's got, 8 books, 10 books, whatever. All my series is already done. And I'm looking around, and I've got my 2 books out. And I'm sitting here like, geez. I'm working on a sequel to The Beast Hunter. I'm working on a sequel to Lost Under Two Moons. But I knew none of them would be done by 2015. And I'm talking about this with my table mate, and she says, and she was a big fan of mine too for a long time, and she said, well, you used to have those short stories that you put up on your website just to kind of fill it out when you didn't have anything else to put on there. What's happening with those? And I said, well, they're just collecting digital dust. They're just sitting on my laptop. She's, well, do something with those. So that's where it came from. And that was actually a good friend of mine, Connie Jasperson, who's also a fantasy author. She was the one who said, you know what, Lindsay, you may not think of yourself as a short story writer, but the fact that you have 8 or 9 of them You are a short story writer.
Surprise!
So I did, and actually, what's kind of funny is you mentioned that there's not really much of a market, but what's been surprising for me, I even noticed this at the launch party last Tuesday, is I had friends and fans that they'll buy my stuff because they love my work and they are just going to keep coming back, which is great.
Oh yes.
But what I also found was that I had a lot of people who showed up and bought my book who were first time readers. They'd never seen any of my stuff before, and they were saying, a novel is too intimidating for me. I see that big story. It's like that's too much of an investment.
I want my stories in 140 characters or less.
Exactly. Yes. You make it all in microfiction. Yes. But it's kind of nice to have these people that otherwise would not be exposed to my stories. They're now kind of learning about who I am and what kind of stories I like to write, and they're getting kind of caught up in it. And who knows? Maybe this is the gateway drug to them going to my novels. But even if not, I'm glad that I can reach out to that audience that I wasn't exposed to before.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mentioned that there's not a big market for short stories in today's world, but that is not entirely true.
Right.
Because you can go and you can post short stories up on Kindle and EPUB and iBooks and everything yourself. What I meant to say was there's no established group of magazines and pulp fiction magazines and all those people that were out there, in the early 20s of 1920.
Right. And actually, it's funny you mentioned that because the reason that these stories even existed in the first place, right, was I decided in college that I was going to be a full-time writer. I'd always been writing, but I tried different things. I wrote for stage. I did over half a dozen stage plays when I was in high school. When I was after high school, I went to film school for a while. So I kind of played around with what I wanted to do with myself creatively. And when I decided, okay, I'm going to be an author, I was like, okay, well, how do I do that? How do I get started? And I looked at some of the greats like Mark Twain, Charles Dickens, Ray Bradbury, and I'm like, you know what? They all got started writing short stories and getting them in periodicals.
Right.
So if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. Not realizing that advice was about 100 to 150 years old.
That market was long since dead.
Yeah, it was kind of dead by the time I had these wonderful short stories, and I'm like, okay, who wants them? And they're like, nobody. We don't want anything.
Nobody out there.
Yeah. Tumbleweeds.
So you did what any respectable author would did, and you put them up on your website.
That's right. I did. Some of them, some of the shorter ones went up there. In fact, I don't know, you mentioned that you took a look through some of them. The first story in the collection, Sharp Sword, Dull Sword, which is about a sarcastic talking sword, and the neuroses that he develops from hanging on a dungeon wall for way too long. That story, it was on my website for a while, and there was one time I Googled myself because I was bored, and what author doesn't Google himself from time to time?
Right.
And I saw my name, Lindsay Schopfer, as a contributing author for the Daily Times of Pakistan. And I'm like, I don't remember that. You'd think that'd be something I'd remember.
Right.
So I go and I look, and there is Sharp Sword, Dull Sword. They picked out several pictures and everything, and my name was all over it. And they had put it in their Halloween special edition for, I think, like 2011 or something. And there it was. It was on their website. It was in their print copy. It was all over the place.
So you get to tell everybody, I'm big in Pakistan.
Yeah, apparently. And it was funny because I actually talked to a publisher friend of mine, Nathan Everett, who was, up until just recently, kind of headquartered in Seattle. And I asked him, Nathan, what should I do here? Should I say thank you? Should I sue them? What, where? Because they stole my story, but they left my name on it, and I wasn't making any money off it anyway. It was just on my website for free. And he said, well, you know what, Lindsay, I would call this your first traditional publication credit, because there was a selection editor that decided that your stuff was good enough to publish in his work. So that's what I did. I
And
sent them a very nice email saying thank you very much, and next time just let me know first.
but now you're an international celebrity.
I am, apparently.
And I went and I like how the story of the talking sword came about.
Oh yeah.
Tell us that.
So this goes back to the trying the Ray Bradbury Mark Twain method of submitting to periodicals and magazines, and there are a few of them out there. They're very tenacious, and there are a few of them still hanging on. But one of them I was looking at, I think maybe some of them decided the best way to try and survive was to be incredibly niche, to be as niche as possible, to be as specialized as possible. And there was one, and I wish I'd saved their submission guidelines page because it was beautiful. They had a list that had at least 30 different separate types of stories that they would not accept.
They do not want.
We do not want this kind of story. And it was all fantasy and sci-fi, right? I mean, it wasn't like they were taking a variety of genres. It was just the speculative fiction. The only other one I can remember off the top of my head was one where they said, we do not want any stories where a group of kids find a magical artifact in the middle of a field.
Wow, that's pretty specific.
That is fairly
They
specific.
got so many of those stories that they're like, no more.
Either that, or they just got one that was so horrible it turned them off to that idea for the rest of their lives.
I'd hate to be that one.
So one of them was no talking sword stories. And up to that time, I had never thought I would write a story about talking swords. I always kind of thought it was kind of goofy. But as soon as they said, do not do it, I have to do it now. I have to write a story. If only for myself, I have to write a talking sword story. So that's how that one came about.
And that is so excellent. That is so excellent.
Thank you.
The very fact that they said, don't do it, you're like, you know what? It never even occurred to me to do it. But now that you told me,
I have to do it.
I have to.
Right.
And they'll never accept it.
No, they won't. Well, of course, now they won't anyway because it's already been published. So, you know,
Yeah.
they won't take it anyway. I doubt they're still in business, to be totally honest.
Well,
but
that's because they were rejecting all the good stories.
they were, yeah. They rejected
All of a sudden,
mine.
they're like, how come we don't get any submissions anymore?
They were all about kids finding magical objects in a field.
And the magical object was a singing sword.
That's what it was. That's what I should have done.
Yeah.
Forget
Taking
having-
all 30 of their don't do it and smash it into one story.
That would be awesome.
Submit it. They would probably have
Now I'm gonna
accepted
have
it.
to go back and see. Did I save it anywhere? Because now I've got to look for that.
It's probably still up there. Because I've looked around at all the different things and I ran across, I believe, probably the exact same list you saw.
Okay, I'll
I
have to
remember
look.
seeing that. I remember seeing the no talking swords. I'm like, huh, really? And so,
awesome.
as well as all the writing that you do for yourself, you also help other people write. So,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that.
So I also work as a writing coach. I'll work with authors. Usually it's authors that are fairly early on in their process. Usually they are working on their first book, and I'll help them with everything from handling writer's block to revision techniques. Basically, what I saw was that it seemed to me there were too many professionals that were focusing on the manuscript, that were trying to help writers to have a publication-ready manuscript. And I would look at that, and I looked at the fees they were charging.
Right.
And I'm like, geez, that's crazy. And my view is I would rather improve the writer than improve the manuscript. I would rather help the writer gain the skills and the talent and the toolbox necessary to do this work themselves. So I always tell people I'm trying to work myself out of business. I'm trying to teach writers to do these things for themselves because I care about their art. I want them to be able to get their stuff out there and to be able to do it, as in as a financially reasonable way as possible, but also to make sure it's still their work. because so often you'll have like a book doctor or somebody, they'll charge you, $3, $4, $5,000,
And then they do their own thing.
and then it's their book, right? And not only that, but you have a dependency on that person now, because when you write your next book, you still have the same problems in the manuscript that were in the last one, so you have to go to this person again.
And they're keeping themselves in business.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So they probably have the smarter business model than I do, but but I have more fun, I think, because I get to see people, I get to see the way they light up when they have accomplished something, when they are the ones doing it and they feel better about themselves, and they come back to me and they're like, we did it, and I'm like, no, you did it. I'm just here. I'm just watching you. Watching you go.
Pointed to the top of the mountain. You're the one who climbed it.
Yeah.
And so that's the yourwritingadventure.com website,
yes.
Correct?
Yeah. And then I also do I do a lot of workshops for a variety of different organizations. I started out giving a lot of workshops for the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, and it's kind of branched out now. I do workshops. My friends always give me a hard time because probably my best client right now is the Romance Writers of America, which no, I'm not a romance writer. But but so many of the things that I teach, it's like character motivation, or it's word choice. It's stuff that's good for any fiction writer.
Genre non-specific.
Yeah, exactly. Although I will tell you one story. When I went to my first romance conference ever as a presenter, well, ever, I guess, because I never went to one not as a presenter.
Yeah, hanging around the romancing, really?
Hey, now you do it. No. So I had one lady who came up to me and she said, "So you're not a romance writer?" No, I write fantasy and steampunk and sci-fi. She's, wow. So do you have a lot of action with that? And I was like, well, yeah. One of my characters is a professional monster hunter. There's a fair bit of action in that. Wow, I can't even imagine that. I mean, I have never written an action sequence in any of my stories. I've never had an action sequence.
Wow.
And I looked at her and I said, you know what? That's okay. I've never written a sex scene. So,
we balance each other out.
Maybe the principles are the same. I don't know. So no, but I love talking to writers from all different genres and everything. In fact, one time I had one of my clients that I was helping with. I met her at a romance conference, and I was helping her with her manuscript. And at one point, she looks at me and says, "This is romance. How do you know this stuff?" And I think a lot of people have a misconception that so many of the skills that a writer will have, they will translate from one genre to another. It's not too terribly specific to one thing.
Right. Story is still story.
Exactly.
No matter whether it's fighting dragons or bedding the girl next door,
Or anything in between.
Or everything in between, because those are the two extremes right there.
That's right. Yeah. So in addition to that, I also I do a lot of volunteer teaching and whatnot. I'll help. Right now, I'm really involved with an organization called EduCurious. I don't know if you've heard of them or not.
I had not before researching you and everything for this interview.
Yeah. So they're really cool. They're a Gates Foundation funded program. And what's really neat is that it's set up in such a way that it's kind of a mentor tutoring kind of program where they set up different types of industry professionals and connect them with disadvantaged high school kids. So I'll work with anywhere from 2 or 3 to as much as almost a dozen kids in a school year, and I'm looking at their story submissions and I'm giving them feedback and stuff, and I really love being able to do that because as I mentioned before, I started writing really young. And I would have loved the opportunity to have talked to a professional writer and to get some of their feedback, and really to be treated as an adult, to be treated as a peer. Maybe not as an adult, but to be treated as an artist, rather than just, oh, what a gifted kid you are.
Right.
You know, you always hear something like, oh, this is so good for someone your age, and it's like, I
Yeah.
don't want to be good for someone my age.
I
I
just
just want
want to
to
be
be good.
good.
Yeah. So when I give my feedback to my students and all, I will tell them, I'm not going to. I will tell you when you do something right, but I'm going to trust you enough that you will be able to handle it when I say there are things you can do better, so that you can do them better, so that when you become a professional, if that's the route you choose to go in, you don't have to learn these hard lessons down the road. You don't have to learn them from, a selection agent, or from, a reviewer who says, this sucks. Why can't he learn how to spell or whatever?
Right.
It's better to learn those kinds of lessons earlier when it's a little safer, and the stakes aren't quite so high.
That's
So,
excellent. That's
yeah.
excellent.
So that's my little bit of a soapbox on that one. So,
It's and it's a good thing to be helping out because they talk about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, but somebody's got to create the stories everybody loves and reads.
right, exactly. Yeah. It's I think that and I'll tell people this too. I actually wrote a blog article on the subject recently about there are different kinds of writers. I think that too many people will look at writing and they'll say, well, if I'm going to be a writer, I have to make a living at it. In order for me to be a successful writer, I have to make a good income off of it. And really, depending on the kind of writing that you're doing, you may have a totally different set of goals, a totally different set of ways to measure success. There are some people. I remember there was a client that I was working with, that I was coaching, and we were working back and forth on this story, and it was kind of about this girl dealing with her mother and everything. It was a very emotional kind of story, and after a while of working together on it, I said, a lot of this seems like it comes from someplace very personal. And she said, well, actually, this is I'm using this as part of my therapy to deal with a lot of trauma that I had growing up. And when she told me that, I was like, you know what, you probably shouldn't be bringing it to me then. Because the kinds of things that I'm bringing to you, as far as looking at this story, it's from a professional standpoint. It's from, okay, how do we sell this? How do we make it fit for your readers? How do we tailor it for a reading audience? But that's not your goal here. That's not what you're trying to accomplish with this story, and anything that I might be adding right now could be damaging for that. So I would rather you work on that, and if at some point down the road you decide, you know what, I'm in a place where I would like more people to read this and share this, then great. But for right now, use it for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. This is therapy for you, and if you ask for my input, there's going to be a car chase.
Yeah. Well, with me, there's probably going to be a monster. Someone's going to have to kill. So
Monster busts into the room.
that's right.
Personal demons. We'll call it personal demons. But
Personal
again,
demons,
still not helping. Still
That's
not
right.
helping her.
It's all metaphorical.
Exactly. So where do you get some of the inspiration and source for your stories? How much based on real life or your life growing up do you bring into your stories? Even though you're dealing with fantasy and beasts and monsters and steampunk, we weren't alive 153 years ago.
Right.
How much of your real life are you pulling into them?
I guess all authors say that all of their characters are some aspect of themselves to some degree. But for me, like I said, the reason that I write is because I love playing make believe, so really very frequently when I'm writing my stories, I get my inspiration from what kind of adventure do I want to go on, what kind of thing do I want to do. And so my characters, for me, in order for me to do that, have to be somebody that I can connect with as an author fairly closely. I can't write a character that is too far removed from me, because then I feel like it's not me on the adventure. I feel like it's not me doing these things, and so I don't I don't have the same level of investment. That's not to say that all of my characters are similar to each other. It's just they have to be some aspect of me, some quality in me, either something that I am proud of or something that I'm not proud of. And the best ones are ones where it's a combination of the two. Where it's like, okay, this is one aspect of me that I really like, and I would love people to say, oh, so that's what you're like, Lindsay. But then there are other aspects where it's like, oh, that's not what you're like, is it? I was like, oh, no, of course not.
That's the part I keep hidden.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
what's next for you? You mentioned before the show we were talking about how, and I also saw on your website you've got a sequel coming for The Beast Hunter.
Yes.
That you're working on.
Yep. I actually I put a little sneak peek of that in the anthology, so now I have to do it.
There you go. So you have committed.
I have. And I'm really excited for that. I'd say that's probably the sequel that I most want to see come out. I am working on a sequel to Lost 102 Moons as well. But that one felt to me that one felt like, if I had to end it, I could. I just felt like there was more to do with Richard, my main character, in that one. But with Kelton Moore, I always knew that I wanted this to be more of an ongoing adventure. I loved. It's a different genre, but I loved the Dirk Pitt series of adventure novels by Clive Cussler. Growing up,
Good stuff.
I love that idea of you kind of have some recurring characters, and there is a timeline of a sort, but each one is its own self-contained adventure, and that's really what my goal was in working on the Kelton Moore series of adventures. So, and I really want to get a sequel out, because otherwise, people are like, oh, so this is the first book in the Kelton Moore series of adventures, and it's the only book in his series of adventures.
It's a short series.
Apparently, he's a very unadventurous person. No, he is, I swear.
He's got a lot planned.
He's got a lot happening. As long as he doesn't die in the next one, which, you never know.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm not that bad. I'm not Game of Thrones.
Kill everyone. Kill them all.
Kill everyone, yeah.
There will be no sequels because nobody lives.
That's right.
So when you do your writing, there's two types of writers. If we want to really just make it simple and basic, there's the outliners, the plotters, and then there's the pantsers, the people that just write into the dark. They got the blank page and they say, I kind of have an idea of where it's going to end, but we'll see if I get there, and then just off they go. So which method do you utilize?
So I actually prefer, rather than the term pantser, I actually prefer the term organic writer. I just let it grow organically. It's a very nice Pacific Northwest kind of mentality. We're really into organic stuff up here. So that's really the way that I like to write. My mentor in writing, the man who's responsible for inspiring me to be a storyteller in the first place, was a man named Steve Sherrick. And Steve would teach. He would teach classes, and the biggest thing that he did was he had like a summer camp. It was a creative writing summer camp for kids, which was really cool. And I went to that until I was way too old to go to it anymore, and he hired me on as an assistant so that I could keep coming. And that was really how I got my start in creative writing.
Excellent.
And he had a mantra, which was, just get it down, we'll clean it up later. And because that was Steve's model, and because I looked up to him so much, that was the way I thought it had to be done, and that's the way that I've learned to do it. I can't say that it's the best way for everyone, but for me, I do it Steve's way.
Steve's way is a good way. I'm a Steve.
Steve way is a good way.
Us Steve's wayers are great.
That's right. My dad's a Steve too, so there's something about that.
And there's something about just getting the story down and out, and having it complete, because the same thing they do in the Hollywood. Oh, we'll fix it in post.
That's right.
Let's just get the scene shot.
That's right. Like this interview, you'll be able to cut out all the times that I was really uninteresting.
Yeah, no, this is all live. It's one and done. One and done. Now the pressure's on.
Yeah, but I actually was doing a workshop called the 4 drafts, a novel in 4 drafts, and a lot of writers they'll fall in love with the first draft writing process, right? Because that's when you can do whatever you want to, you can experiment, you can have fun. The story has endless possibilities. But then they get to the revisions stage and they start feeling like, oh, this is when I have to start telling myself I'm not good enough.
And now it's work.
Saying, oh, yeah, now it's work. And my mentality is totally the opposite. I really hate writing first drafts. I love revising. I love that. My mentality is that first draft is like cutting raw stone out of a quarry, and then every stage after that is making cuts to that stone, refining that stone, finding the shape, finding what it is going to eventually be. Another way to look at it that I've heard before that I really liked is when you write the first draft, you're just telling yourself the story. Every subsequent draft is preparing it for other people to enjoy the story. So, if you just focus on that first draft, unless, like we were saying earlier, unless you're writing the story just for you, then great, just do that. But if you're intending for this story to be for other people, then don't be selfish. Spend the time to make the story accessible to other people so that they can have as much fun and enjoyment out of it as you got.
And at the same time, with those, the later drafts, that's when your beta readers or alpha readers or your
Right.
first readers, they got different names for them, where they come into play so that you can realize, does this story work for another human brain other than mine?
Right. And, I love using beta readers. I use them for all three of my books. And usually when I do beta readers, I'll have like a couple that are writers, but more often than not, most of my beta readers are just average people, regular folks that I shouldn't say average people because they're awesome because they're willing to beta
They're
read for me.
awesome people.
They are
They're going to watch this video and go, I'm not reading anymore for him.
That's right. Oh well. Well, if that's all it took to get them to stop reading for me, then maybe my stories aren't as good as I thought. But no, I actually had a friend who was reading for me for the anthology that just came out last week, and he's actually an anesthesiologist, and he was saying, Lindsay, I'm nervous about giving you feedback because I'm not a professional writer. I can't tell you everything that might need to be changed. And I told him, you know what? Think of it like you are the patient and I'm the doctor. You are giving me the symptoms and trust in me to have the knowledge to be able to interpret those systems into a diagnosis. So that seemed to really help him in just kind of opening up and then saying, oh, well, in that case, there's this, and this, and this. And I was
Yeah,
like,
well,
oh,
in that
man.
case, I'm an anesthesiologist. I put people to sleep for a living. I've been using your books now.
That's right. Actually,
They're very effective.
for whatever reason, I seem to attract a fair number of anesthesiologists. Because there was another one that was beta reading for the Beast Hunter, and he would tell me that when he was beta reading for it, he would put somebody under, and then I guess because all they're doing is just kind of monitoring things at that point for 3-4 hours. He'd put the person under, and then while the surgery's going on, he's just reading my book. I'm like, well, geez, I hope it wasn't too captivating. All of a sudden, oh,
Right. Hold on. I'm at a good part. Excellent. So before, I pretty much have asked all the questions that I have. So do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
Let's see, advice for aspiring writers. I think the biggest thing to do first is the biggest thing is to enjoy the journey, right? If it's so hard to be successful at anything, it's so hard to do anything that requires a great deal of effort, and writing a book is no different. So why would you torture yourself? Why would you make this into one more difficult thing, one more hard part that you dread in your life? Do what you need to do so that you can enjoy this process, so that this is something that you enjoy, this is something that you love. I tell the story sometimes about how my grandfather passed away while I was working on Lost Sun and Two Moons, and I was actually his caregiver. So that it hit me a lot harder when that happened. And at the time, I was still in college, and I went to the professor that I was kind of working with on Lost Sun and Two Moons, and she said, have you done any writing in the last week? And I said, no, my grandfather died, and I didn't do any writing, and I don't know when I will. I don't know if I'll write again next week. I don't know if I'll write this month. I just don't know. And she said, well, Lindsay, you can either run away from your writing or you can run to your writing. And that's something that stuck with me. I'm not saying that you should just force yourself to write when something significant happens. You should validate emotional experiences. You should be willing to say, you know what, I need time to grieve or whatever if something's happening.
Right.
But your writing should be a place of solace. Your writing should be a place of comfort where you feel safe, and you feel like you can be creative and you can be yourself if you can't do that anywhere else. So whatever it takes to get you to that point where you can feel, this is where I can be me. This is where I can be Lindsay. This is where I can play make believe, where it's safe to do that. And then, because the beautiful part is, down the road, you then share that with somebody, and they come to you and they say, this touched me. And that's a connection that I'm not sure you can get any other way, because you poured your heart into that, and it connected with somebody else, and that collaborative effort between the two of you, you told a better story than you alone could have ever told.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Now, switching gears a little bit here.
Okay.
For anybody who's watching this video or a potential reader of yours for your current books that are out or any books in the future, do you have anything that you would like to say to them?
So to anybody who has read my books or will read my books?
Readers or potential readers for you?
To people who have read my books, thank you. And thank you for being a part of that collaborative process. I cannot do this without you. For people who are potential readers, buy my book. No.
And in that avenue, I have, if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're watching this embedded in any of the other site, just click on the link down there that says watch on YouTube, and I have all the links down below in the description for Lindsay's books on Amazon, and so you can click on that link and see all his books. Also, to connect with him, I have his website, his Facebook, his Twitter, his Goodreads. He has a couple of really good videos on YouTube, book trailers and everything. And then also he has his blog that he does a lot of things on. And I also have the Adventures in Writing website down there below. So if you're a writer looking for that little extra nudge, push, or help, definitely give that a check-see. And so connect with him, check out his books on Amazon. I guarantee you go and you read the little beginning teaser that Amazon lets you take a look at. You're going to go, yep, click, buy.
Thanks, Steve.
All right. So, hey, thank you so very much, Lindsay, for being on the show. Don't hang up just yet. I'm going to go ahead and close down the interview, and I'll be right back to you. We'll chat for a couple more minutes.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right. So, again, that was Lindsay Schopfer. And Magic, Mystery, and Mirth is a book that just came out just this past week, middle of November of 2015. And a lot of fun. I read through a little bit of that and a lot of fun for there. And The Beast Hunter, which came out in 2014, and he is currently working on the sequel, Into the North, for that one. And then Lost Under Two Moons, he said he's also working on the sequel for that and working on a whole bunch of other stuff. So definitely check out Lindsay Schopfer. He is somebody to keep an eye on, and he's got a lot of good stuff coming up, and he's definitely helping a lot of people. And in any industry, in anything, just we're people in the world, helping others is the way to do it. And I love it. And that's one of the reasons why I do my OD&T Spotlight. I like to help my fellow creators get out there and get more recognition, more notice, and more everything. So for those of you who are watching this, thank you very much. For those of you who subscribed, thank you very much. Join the ODN team and subscribe to this channel. I have many more authors, artists, actors, musicians, ever to come on my show. I'll have them on my show. So thank you very much for watching. Have a great night. Bye.